My name is Kim Peterson from Cedar Fundraising, and I'm here today with Yvonne, who is going to do a Zentangle demo. And I thought, usually I talk about fundraising on my channel and on LinkedIn here, but since it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and since I love being creative and drawing, and I also know Yvonne, I thought this would be a really cool, fun opportunity to do something a little bit different. And since it's the end of the week as well, and we all need to take some time for ourselves sometimes to just sort of recollect, I also thought this might be a great opportunity too, if you need that moment for yourself. So I've asked Yvonne to come on here, and I will let her introduce herself and also talk about what she does and what exactly Zentangle is. So go ahead, Yvonne.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, so I'm Yvonne Westover. I'm a certified Zentangle teacher and artist, lots of other things too. But my love for Zentangle is now 10 years going, and Zentangle's a method of drawing that not only has a really great creative aspect to it, but the process of it is really fantastic to use for self-care, to reduce stress and overwhelm, sort of a mindfulness and get yourself focused activity. Over the last 10 years, I've taught it in a variety of settings, from school programs to corporate lunch and learns, senior centers to private events. And so I've been very fortunate over the 10 years to really see the benefits of Zentangle in a multitude of age groups and settings. And the one thing that everybody always comments on after a full lesson is how much calmer they feel, how relaxed they are and stuff. So even though we've already kind of referred to Zentangle as a creative activity, a drawing activity, I don't want you to stress out, because it really requires no art experience. I think when sometimes people hear the word, oh, it's something creative, or it's a way to make art, people kind of go, oh no, like I don't draw, I can't draw a stick person. And so the beauty of Zentangle is it's a very step-by-step process. And if you can write your name and today's date, then you can absolutely, participate in this drawing activity and sort of get into that zone, into that flow where you just kind of, you just sort of chill out a little bit. It's kind of like when you go for a walk or a run or a yoga class. After a couple of those first, those stretches, those movements, or after that first mile, your brain just kind of lets everything get processed in the background, and you just sort of zone out into that activity that you're doing. And that's pretty much what Zentangle is.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I've tried journaling before, and I'm not a great or consistent meditation person. So something like this really calls to me because, yeah, because it seems like more fun to me than like thinking of something to write.
Yeah. So I kind of do use it as a journal practice, only because for me, yeah, you journal and then you start thinking about what you're writing. And then sometimes some of those emotions or what you're writing about, you start to kind of overthink it, or you kind of go, oh, maybe I should have said that. Or, well, what if I did this next time? And it kind of almost creates like more stress or more kind of overwhelm or anxiety over the words that you're putting on the page. And then for me also is like, if somebody was to find the journal and read your words, it's like, oh no. But if they were just to find, like a series of these little squares, they'd be like, oh, this stuff is really cool. Like somebody can really draw. And so the idea, with this is that it's a small piece of paper. It's like coaster size, and it's once you've kind of gotten the hang of it, like anything else, like yoga or kicking a soccer ball or playing the piano, once you've gotten the hang of it, you know what to do with it. Really, in about 20 minutes, you can get a little piece done. And that 20 minutes is really just enough time to sort of lower your stress level, get your breathing kind of, in a relaxed kind of state. There's lots of studies, that have been done on creativity and how a creative activity like drawing or playing some music, or knitting or embroidery, whatever it is, lowers your cortisol levels and it increases your dopamine, which is like you're happy. So you're lowering your stress hormone and you're increasing your sort of happiness hormone at the same time. And that's exactly what any physical activity does. So sometimes, if you can't get to yoga class or it's raining and you don't want to go out for your run, doing something creative sort of has that same benefit. And Zentangle is really easy because it really is just pen and paper. I mean, you can get super fancy if you are sort of a creative type. You can use colored pens, you can watercolor, like don't you can totally pull out the whole craft cupboard for this if you wanted. But really, if you're sitting at your desk, honestly, a Post-it note and a pen, and you can just take 15-20 minutes and do, this little exercise, and you'll have this sort of refocused, less anxious sort of state of mind.
Cool. Okay, so you got your pen and paper, and I brought one too. It's not like a cute little square, but it'll do.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn on Yvonne's drawing camera here and switch her up so that, oops, there we go.
All right.
All right. So if you're watching now or catching this later, you can participate, I think. I'm going to grab a pen.
Yeah. So just grab whatever paper you have around. I know I said it should be coaster size, but I get that you weren't prepared and you may have just tuned in. So that's okay. I will preface this by saying this is, of course, a quick little, 10-minute or less demo. Like anything else, if I was to show you 1 or 2 yoga poses, that is certainly not, a full introduction into what yoga can do for you. And so it's the same here. There is an actual sort of beginning, middle, and end to the Zentangle process. And we're gonna do one tiny little portion of the entire process, which is actually drawing a pattern. So Zentangle is a method of putting your pen to paper in a series of pen strokes that build a repetitive pattern. And the reason why that works to get you sort of relaxed and bring down those stress levels is because it's repetitive. So very quickly you sort of get into that zone of doing the same thing over and over. And that is really what the process is about. And then there's all kinds of creative ways to put it all together. But for the purpose of making this very accessible and very quick and easy, if you have a Post-it note, whatever piece of paper, if you have a larger piece of paper, my trick for kind of getting a square done, if you were to take your hand and sort of make that L shape, you could very quickly draw yourself. I see we have some screen time issues here. Very quickly draw yourself a square by that L shape of your hand there. And there are hundreds and thousands of tangles out there. They're all based on patterns that either people have created, patterns that we find in nature, in architecture. And one of the basic sort of patterns that we often start with in a beginner lesson is the grid. So tic-tac-toe is a really good example. You can just make, a grid where you're doing several lines and then you cross them. The beauty of Zentangle is there are no mistakes. This is a bit of a wonky grid. I wouldn't, necessarily claim to say this is a perfect tic-tac-toe grid, but in reference to, having you be familiar with what you can do, we'll start with this. And there are lots and lots of grid patterns. We're going to start with one called Enzeppel. And so you've done your grid any which way. If you've done 6 lines in both directions, it really doesn't matter. I could have put an extra one across there, and I could have done any number of things. So if we have our next step, this would have been our first step. Our next step as a pattern would go, and in particular the one in Zeppel that we're going to use today, you're going to pick one of the squares and you're going to find one of the sides, and you're going to put your pen back down on that side, and you're going to go in and start drawing. So you're almost tracing this side, and once you get to this corner, you're going to kind of turn the corner and you're going to hit the other side. And so you're going to continue on, you're going to get to this corner and you're going to turn the corner and come back down, follow along the side. You're going to get to the corner and turn it. So it's almost like you're trying to squish a balloon or a bubble into sort of a box. And you can do that a few more times in all of these boxes. And you can see how quickly, and I sort of finish here. I don't have another sidewall here to squish into, so I'm just going to leave it completely open. The other thing about this size of paper is that because it's so small, it's usually 3.5 by 3.5 inches square, is that I can get this done in 15 or 20 minutes. So that is one tangle, and I've just decided we're going to throw in a second one because we have a few minutes. And like I said, there's several different categories of tangles. We've sort of developed these categories over years, and tangle is actually 20 years old this year. And so all the tangles that have been developed, we now have categories. So we're going to stick with the grid category, and we're going to do another tangle called bales. And bales is essentially using the lines of the grid. You're going to do a C shape. So think of a bracket, and you're going to go from one corner and make that C shape or that bracket and pull it down to where it meets another corner. And then you'll do it on the opposite side. So now you're doing the right bracket or a reverse C shape. And you end up with something that looks like maybe a grain of rice or a coffee bean. And then you could go in and do that on every other set of corners. And we can mix it up and put in parts of patterns somewhere beside another pattern. And then you can also turn your tile and do it on the other lines. So on those cross grid lines. And you'll very quickly come to see how this is a little more than a doodle. There's a little bit more consistency. There's a little bit more flow and rhythm to this. Not that there is anything wrong with doodling. I know some fantastic doodlers, but when I ask them to show me what their little design is or try to repeat it, when they actually have to think about it, it's almost like they can't do it because it's so ingrained, it's so innate, it's their habit to do that. So part of the beauty of Zentangle is a lot of these pen strokes have been sort of broken down and put back together in 6 steps or less to create intricate looking patterns, but ones that can be done very quickly. And they give you a little creative experience, a restful experience. And it's totally abstract. It does not, we're not trying to draw a bowl of fruit or the scene out of the office window or the vase of flowers on the front desk. And so this is just a very, very simple, basic introduction. And there are any number of things that would happen with this tile. I've just shown you basically 2 tangles. And in 10 minutes, it's just a little taste. It's just a little teaser of what Zentangle is. But once you know the whole process, much like a series of yoga stretches or a series of little, pylon run through exercises to get to that soccer ball to kick it to the net. There's of course always more to the process, but this is just a little sample of, what Zentangle is and what it can do for you.
Okay, cool. So I'll just close that, bring us back here. So you're saying how Zentangle's 20 years old now. And it sounds like
Yeah.
so that's amazing. It sounds like there's a whole community around this practice. Like, what is that community like?
It's, you know what, when I got into Zentangle in 2012, and then I went down to Rhode Island in 2013. So a year after I learned about it, I was just so mesmerized by the process. I went down to Rhode Island and took the certification course from the founders. And it was sort of like, I don't want to say it was secret, but the internet was a very different place in the 2012, 2013. And so it was really kind of hard to figure out what Zentangle was. And there were a couple of books, there were a few websites that you could find out about it. And so in the last 10 years, even since then, I mean, the way the internet has gone, certainly in the last 3 years with the pandemic and online learning and so many more resources going online that never were before. The community of tanglers, as we refer to ourselves, is amazing. It really doesn't matter what you do in your own life. It's a very diverse group. We're all over the world. I think we have about 7,000 certified Zentangle teachers worldwide now. Certainly when I was certified 10 years ago, I think we had just under 2,000. So it is a community of people who have come to discover this method of drawing, and not only the creative benefits, but the sort of the health and mental health benefits that it has. And there's lots of groups online you can be a part of. And we're always very supportive, very encouraging, very helpful. So if you're wanting to learn the method, we're always just going, oh yeah, do this, or here's where you can get supplies. Or if you post a piece that you've drawn, we're always very encouraging, because a big part of Zentangle is that it's a no mistakes method. There is no right or wrong, much like in art, really. Art is not right or wrong. It's just an expression, right? And so that is what Zentangle is. When you sit down with one of these squares for the 15, 20 minutes, you're giving yourself sort of that gift of time, that moment where you can just sit and be and connect with yourself, both feet on the floor, kind of at your desk or wherever you are, and just ground yourself. And what you end up drawing is literally an expression of the time and space that you're in. And so that way, when you do post it in any of the groups or on your social media channels or whatever, we all, the rest of the tanglers all know that that's not up for criticism. It's literally a, hey, I drew this today, or look at where my pen took me today. And if you were to sit down and use the same, like if you were to sit down and do this little exercise again tomorrow, guaranteed it would turn out completely different. Kind of like your handwriting, your journaling example earlier. When you flip through your journal and you can see the changes in your handwriting.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. If you're in a really good, happy mood, then your drawings reflect that. I certainly know if I'm very stressed, or if I'm kind of frustrated with something that's been going on, I tend to grip my pen, like death grip. And my drawing tends to be much smaller, much tighter. And when I'm in a happier mood, or if I'm feeling kind of really creative and just chill and stuff, my drawings tend to be much more open and sort of organic. There's kind of a flow to them. So in all the communities and stuff, we understand that. Like it's literally just, hey, I was going through my day, I sat down, took some time to tangle. This is what I did. And it really is. It's amazing to me how people all over the world have taken to this, because it's something that you can actually do. There's no supply barrier, there's no age barrier, there's no language barrier, really. We have a couple of teachers that literally teach silent.
Hmm.
where you're just kind of like you saw my hands on the screen. They will slide over like a little instruction of what the next set of pen strokes are going to be. So it's also very easy depending on what type of learner you are. If you're visual, if you're auditory, it really covers like a lot of the different accessibility factors that sometimes people feel they have when it comes to, you know, being creative or any type of activity. So it is a really fantastic community. I went to art school. I did the whole fine art thing, and you know, there's a little bit of sort of upper crusty, you know, fancy kind of. And with Zentangle, all of that just seems to go away. People just get so thrilled that they thought they couldn't draw. And, you know, within a few weeks of sort of dedicating some time to tangling, they come up with some really fantastic drawings and they start to, you know, put them on the fridge and put them on the wall and give them as gifts and stuff. So
Oh, amazing. I mean, I think I might be hooked, but I've only can't really see it. My
my
friend
gosh, I love it. I love it. Well,
This is so cool.
Post-it notes, right? You could have quite the display on the office bulletin board.
Yes, and I love Post-it notes, and I know a lot of people do.
Well, they just happen to be the perfect square size. They're about a half inch smaller than an actual Zentangle tile. And with that being said, you know, as much as there is an art side to this where there are specific materials that we recommend you use, for example, you know, the tile that I used is actually branded, but it's handmade Italian paper. It is absolutely beautiful to draw on. And then, of course, you know, a micron, like a better type of art pen.
Yeah.
But in the end, even the founders say it really is about the process. You can, you know, take a stick in the sand and do this. I've done it, you know, on the back of my car window with my finger in the snow, that kind of thing. It is really about the process. It's much like yoga, right? I mean, I was in the airport terminal the other day and there was 3 people standing there in the lounge doing their yoga exercises. So yes, to do yoga well or properly, you'd want to go to a studio and have your mat and the right clothing. But at the end of the day, you know, there's chair yoga that people do in their office and stuff like that. So it's, you know, there is a little bit that can be done sort of, you know, if you want to say the correct way, but really it is about the method and then just being able to use that method whenever you need it, whenever you need kind of that moment of just self-care, just to calm yourself down, kind of bring down that overwhelm and anxiety level and just, you know, you focus on what's right in front of you. So everything else that's kind of going around you can just sort of dissipate into the background.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Yvonne. Before we hop off, you do this for business, right? So can you give yourself a little plug and tell us what you do?
I do. I teach workshops. I am lucky enough to constantly be invited to teach at different places and stuff. So I have, throughout the pandemic, I had quite an online teaching schedule. That has sort of fallen by the wayside, but it's something I'm hoping to plan some regularly scheduled online classes again. But my website is Why We Start. So the letter Y, WESTART.ca. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under the same name at Y, the letter Y, We Start. And so, you know, a couple things I'm looking forward to this summer is there's a lavender farm that I teach at. So I will be there in August. And then I happen to be teaching this as a continuing education program at the Halliburton School of Fine Art. So if you're interested in either a one-day intensive, that happens to be on July 15th, which is a Saturday, or if you're up in cottage country for the week, if you happen to have a place up there, you can join me for a whole week where we explore Zentangle in a much more creative way with paint and paper and printing and stuff like that. And that is the week of July 17th, and that's at the Halliburton School of Fine Art. Other than that, I mostly post anything that I have going on in my 2 channels, on Instagram and on Facebook. And then, of course, you can always send me an email through my website as well for anything you'd like to discuss in terms of planning a private event or a lunch and learn or, you know, a group event for something.
Right, because you do this for corporate clients as well, right?
Yeah, I've had some really fantastic experiences with Loblaws and the Canadian Association for Mental Health. So, it being May and the Mental Health Awareness Month, I say the honor because I truly was honored. The regional offices here had me for 2 years in a row. So they had in January they have an employee retreat day. So it's basically where a lot of their counselors and some of their administrative staff have a day where the company puts on a day where they can come, they have lunch, they network, they socialize, they have some tools. They're provided with some tools where they can then take care of themselves as counselors. And so for 2 years in a row, I was part of that presentation. It was right before COVID hit, so they haven't done it since, actually. And so I got to introduce Zentangle to their counselors, not as a tool for them to use with their clients and patients, but actually as a tool for the therapists to use for themselves to sort of so yeah, and then I've done the Retired Teachers of Ontario. There's been several, actually. I do have them listed on my website, and I've done them as very quick sessions as corporate lunch and learns, and then I've sort of done them as team building sessions where we have a little bit more time. Usually it's a full afternoon session, kind of a fun Friday or a mindful, wellness Wednesday, and there's a couple of different ways, yeah, that I can structure those corporate programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and there are always companies looking for these kind of like lunch and learns and just like the mental health activities that they can provide for their employees. So that is so cool that you do that.
Yeah, it was, you know what, it was funny because I was doing them before the pandemic, then they were in person. And then during the pandemic, it was interesting. I had a few because, again, everybody was working from home. And so I had a couple of corporate sessions where I had to do 2 or 3 sessions for the same company because we were trying to reach different time zones. And so, for me, that was a great learning experience as well, because it gave me the opportunity to now offer online sessions if it is a larger corporation and they do have offices in different time zones and stuff. It's, or we can do a recorded session and stuff. But, being able to teach a session to North America and then being able to teach a session to like sort of India and Asia was also a really great experience.
Oh, wow.
And again, the language barrier there wasn't really an issue because it is a very visual type of instruction as well.
That's true. And what a cool way to bring people together and be doing like the same thing, as a team.
Yeah, yeah. One of the actually in my most recent one with Loblaws, it was really interesting because like sort of in came one of the VPs, and there was sort of the admin staff, and normally like you'd maybe just say hello in the hallway. You wouldn't really necessarily engage in conversation. There's just a corporate hierarchy that happens. It's just a natural part of communication. And so it's really interesting then to see employees from different levels of the company and stuff that may not ever interact, but here they are sitting around a table, doing an activity that is usually new to all of them. And it's not like axe throwing or a softball game or, frisbee golf or whatever. It's something very new and different for most of them. And there's a part at the end of the lesson, because for the most part, people have their heads down, they're kind of focusing on what they're drawing with my instructions. And at the end, I sort of take all their pieces and they get worried that there's going to be some kind of grading happening. But what I do with them all is I actually, much like this on the wall, I put them all together in what's called a mosaic. And they've all gotten the same instruction. They've all sat in the same room, heard the same thing, used the same supplies. And when I put all their pieces together in a mosaic and then call them over to look at it, there's this aha moment. People sort of go, oh my gosh, I thought I did mine wrong, or, oh, I thought I drew mine too big. And they start looking and complimenting and picking out things in other pieces that show that, even though they all got the same instruction, they all had a different approach. There was all, their internal thought process made them do something a different way. And so you end up having high level executives, in these great discussions with maybe the mailroom person or some other admin people or salespeople that they wouldn't normally interact with. And it sort of, there's these barriers that kind of get broken down because they're all now sort of thinking outside of the box a little bit. They're all seeing that even though they did something individually, they've contributed to this greater whole, this mosaic. But even within those pieces, there's all these individual differences, but they're not that noticeable when it all comes together. So there's a lot of, in terms of team building and that whole corporate wellness employee engagement initiative, there's a lot of things that come out of Zentangle, sort of, as well as that mental health piece, that piece of just, being able to take a few minutes, even if it's just at your desk or in the break room or sneaking off to the conference room. And I had one company send me pictures later what they did in their lunchroom. They had people sort of start these and they'd pin them up on the bulletin board with a take me, finish me kind of thing. So somebody could take one and finish it at their desk and then post it back up like, oh, hey, look how I finished it and stuff. So again, there's lots of ways that have surprised me in how people have then taken this practice and included it, in whatever it is, in either their personal lives or, in a corporate setting like that.
Wow. Well, that's just a joy to witness that kind of thing. So.
Oh, it is. There's something I learn out of every session that I do. And like I said, I've been teaching this for 10 years. I've had over 3,500 students already. And every time I teach, there's still something new that I learn, or I'm re-inspired. Somebody's drawn something that I may have already drawn 100 or 500 times, and they have an approach to it. And then I usually take my phone. I'm like, can I take a picture of that? Because that's really inspiring. And they kind of go, hang on a second. You're the one who's... But that's the beauty of creativity. That's just how it works. So
yeah. All right. Well, Yvonne, thank you very much. We'll
Thanks
let you
for
go.
having me, Kim. This was a great idea.
Yeah, great. Well, happy Zentangling, everyone, and have a good weekend.